Hello, I am Gold Derby editor Daniel Montgomery, and I'm here with our contributor Amanda Spears. We are here to talk about Gilmore Girls, which is returning to Netflix on November 25th. After it's been 9 years since it went off the air. It originally aired on the WB from 2000 to 2006, and then one more season on the CW from 2006 to 2007. But as many things this season, it has such a devoted fan base, including Amanda and myself, that it has been revived on Netflix. The way we've seen, the X-Files, Fox, Twin Peaks is coming back on Showtime. So a lot, everything old is new again in Hollywood. So first off, Amanda, I just want to ask, what was it about the Gilmore Girls that makes you most excited that it's coming back?
Well, I never really loved the way it ended. I just kind of felt like it. I know the show didn't end with under the showrunner Amy Sherman-Palladino from the first 6 seasons. So I'm kind of curious now that she is back, what she's going to do. So yeah, I'm hoping for a more satisfying kind of closure to this.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. That was one of the big controversies towards the end of Gilmore Girls, was that Amy Sherman-Palladino departed from the show for its last season. And the last season, I think a lot of people drag on that last season a lot. And I don't think it was what the show was previously, but I don't think it was like terrible. I think it felt a little bit at times like Gilmore Girls fan fiction. Like it felt like someone trying to write like Gilmore Girls, and sometimes it worked better than others. But I agree, it will be really, really good to have Amy Sherman-Palladino back, and she can, if this is the ending, or if they decide to do another season or miniseries of some kind down the road, to have her at least get to do it on her own terms. I remember back when the show was happening, and she had left the show. I think she talked about at one point, she had like this perfect last line or something that that she wasn't gonna get to do. And I don't know, maybe we'll actually get that at the end of episode 4 of Gilmore Girls: A Year in the Life.
Well, I remember reading that she didn't want it to end with a wedding, and she didn't like it that Rory just left to go follow Obama around the country. So I don't think one of them has to get married, although it would be nice to see one of them actually married. But it'll be interesting to see where it goes, since we know a lot, since everyone's coming back except for Edward Herrmann, who passed away.
Yeah, and we see from the trailer that was recently released a week or two ago that the show will address that. Richard Gilmore, the father of Lorelai Gilmore, who Edward Herrmann played, that character passes away on the show, and that's gonna, I'm sure it's gonna be amazing material for Lauren Graham, and of course Kelly Bishop as Emily Gilmore, who I think was always one of the, the way that character started, it's mostly an adversarial relationship with her daughter Lorelai, but as the years went on, that character just developed so many extra layers of depth that I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out and how they pay tribute to him.
Yeah, I mean, he featured heavily in the trailer, and of course, he's passed away. So I'm sure that it'll address it, and it'll be nice tribute to him, because they all had such wonderful things to say about him after he passed away. So it'll be sad he's not a part of it. I always loved him and Rory, Alexis Bledel, his grandfather and granddaughter. They were so cute together.
Yeah, I always loved the way those relationships developed, and I remember, I've been binge watching a lot of the show in recent weeks, not necessarily for this, but just generally because, if you need to feel good on like a bad day, then episodes of Gilmore Girls are kind of, they kind of help a lot with that. And I remember some of the episodes that I watched recently were episodes surrounding early seasons, around seasons 2 and 3. Where Richard was retiring and he was driving Emily crazy, and he visits Stars Hollow in one episode, and he has this wonderful scene where he tells Lorelai, who they're having an argument, that he knows what it feels like to be obsolete, and it's so heartbreaking and such a great scene, and it made me look at Edward Herrmann and think, I can't believe he's gone. It's a really big loss for the show, but also an opportunity for them to get to pay tribute to him when the show returns.
And there was an episode in season 7 when he was very sick, and Emily was trying to grasp with the idea that what her life would be like without him. It was probably one of my favorite episodes of season 7, where she's kind of envying how Lorelai is so independent. So that unfortunately kind of foreshadows what we're probably going to be seeing a little bit of as far as Emily's arc over those 4 episodes.
Another thing that strikes me about Gilmore Girls, and it strikes me about a lot of TV that I loved as a teenager or as a younger adult. When the show started, the premise of the show when it started was Lorelai Gilmore had a daughter at 16 years old. When the show begins, her daughter Rory is 16, and she's then 32 years old. I was 16 years old when this show started, and I just turned 33 this week. So I watched the show on a completely different dimension 16 years later, in that I am now a contemporary of where Lorelai was when the show started. So and I think that's probably one of the, that generational aspect. It's probably one of the reasons the show is still really kind of popular and still has this following after 16 years, is because, you can start, when you first watch the show, you can be Rory. When you watch the show again, you could be Lorelai. And I don't know, give me 20, 30 years, I watch the show again, I could be Emily and Richard. So though probably not with that much money. But yeah, it really kind of expands the way you can experience a show like this.
Oh, absolutely. I'm kind of in the same boat. So I completely agree, because it's just weird to see it so many years later, because it's not something I rewatched a lot of. So on Netflix, I've been kind of refreshing.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm watching old back episodes. The pop culture references, of course, are inherently dated. They're about things that are currently happening. I was going through old quotes, and there's one about Queer Eye for the straight guy, and that's not a thing anymore. But
Call Me When Hillary's President.
Oh yeah, there's a great scene with Paris running for student body president at Chilton, and she has her flunkies doing this kind of exit poll, see whether people want her to be president, and the results were that, everyone thinks you're the smartest, everyone thinks you're the most competent, but they're not going to vote for you because they don't like you. And she delivered dialogue. It's like, so they're gonna nominate some bozos who knows nothing because they don't like me, and it's like, oh my goodness, she was Hillary. She was Hillary before that was a thing.
Oh yeah, but she was like with the volume turned up. But I loved it. Wasn't even like one of my favorite episodes, but I just remember the scene where she's going to tutor people for the SAT or ACT tests, and she's giving one to the kid and to the parent, and she's trying to figure out if the kid is stupid or lazy. Because stupid she can't help, but lazy she can scare out of them. I'm like, that's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah, Paris was one of those characters who, played by Eliza Weil, who's now on How to Get Away with Murder. Which honestly, if you could transplant Paris into that show, and she would not only survive, I think she probably would have murdered half the cast and gotten away with it by now. She's pretty formidable. But
That body would have been better taken care of in season 1 if Paris was in charge of disposal.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And she was one of those characters, kind of like Emily, who started as kind of one thing and then grew into so many more different things. She became kind of a favorite of mine because she was so brittle. She had that toughness, but she was also really kind of fragile in many ways, and I loved seeing that balance that she gave.
Yeah, when she didn't get into Harvard, and since I was making top 10 lists, that episode, that would have given C-SPAN something really great to see if this kid actually got up there.
Another thing that we're going to be seeing is, one of the long threads on this show was the will they or won't they of Lorelai and Luke, who owns the diner. And that's one of those things, so many shows have that kind of dynamic, you Jim and Pam on The Office, and Sam and Diane and Cheers, and it can either go perfect, or it can go too long, or it can go too short where then there's no dramatic tension afterwards. This one I felt was a little too long. Like it was so inevitable for so long that I feel like they could have pulled the trigger on that one a little sooner. I think it took 4 or 5 seasons, or maybe more.
Well, they got together around the end of season 4. They're engaged by the end of season 5, and then Rory and Lorelai were estranged, and that's why they were waiting. And then once they introduced his daughter, he didn't know. I'm like, they're never going to get married now. It's just, I just wish they would have either been together or apart, because they just kept going back and forth a little too much. I'm more interested to see if Rory ends up with one of the 3.
Do you have a preference for Rory in terms of those 3, or none of the above? I'm a little bit none of the above, but what are your thoughts on that one?
I think it would probably be Logan. I mean, he got the closest. Matt Kazushki, I can't pronounce his last name.
Jushri? I'm gonna mangle that too. Matt Jushri is what I'm going with, pronunciation wise. Hopefully I said it fast enough that it sounds okay.
Yeah, I think he would probably be the most likely, because he was, again, the most mature relationship she had. But I'd like to think that one of them can have a healthy, normal relationship, because it just is a little odd that not. Yeah, maybe it's just me that.
I was never, I was on Team Dean for a long time but that sort of went in a really sour direction for both of them, that I'm not sure. I mean, that baggage might be a little bit too much. And then there was Jess, played by Mila Ventimiglia, who sort of was an interloper in that first relationship for Rory. And I never liked him either. I always felt I never got the bad boy thing. It's just like, I don't root for that. I'm like, he's kind of a jerk, and he's good to her, and he, they have a lot in common. But I feel like, I don't know, I don't buy someone who thinks, who it is the way that he was, and thinks that's, messing with Dean and all that sort of stuff. I just never. I was Lorelai even at the time, saying like, I just don't like this kid. Just don't like this kid.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of him. Not a fan, but we'll see. It'll be interesting to see if either of them is in some kind of normal, stable relationship. But I'd like to think they're capable of it.
I'd like to think Jess could have become the right guy, like, later. So it'll be interesting to see if he's matured to a certain degree, or to what degree, and in what direction. Because I feel like Rory was already kind of grown up. I mean, she was a little bit naive and immature in a lot of ways, but she already had kind of a head on her shoulders that Jess didn't at the time. So I think if Jess could grow up, then they might be finally a match that would actually make sense to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's either Jess or Logan. I don't think Dean's kind of in the picture, personally. I think career-wise, not to like dismay Jared Padalecki from what he's done, but Milo has been on 2 decent shows. Matt just finished Good Wife, so I think that might be one of those 2 for that reason.
I would love to see them fold that in somehow, where where we find out that in the intervening years, Logan Huntsberger was working at this law firm. It would be a nice little nod to where they've been since, and maybe Jess was doing whatever. I can't remember what was the character, nurse in Heroes or something like that, before he got superpowers. Or I remember so little of Heroes at this point. I remember so much more of Gilmore Girls.
Yeah, I don't remember what he was doing on Heroes, but he's been on 2. He's now on 1, and he's on 2 pretty buzzed about shows. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't think they're probably thinking that strategic. Like, it's got to be one that's been on a big network show.
Now, another thing that I think everyone loves about Gilmore Girls is the ensemble cast. I think you have the core group, but the recurring players, the Stars Hollow residents, the even some of the Chilton students, and but especially the Stars Hollow residents. It was such like what's great about Stars Hollow, and one of the big appeals of the show to me, is that I really just kind of wanted to live there.
Me too. Or at least visit.
Yeah, I want to go to those town meetings. I want to go to those like out of time, town events. Like one of the episodes I saw was the picnic basket episode, where the bachelors buy picnic baskets put together by the women folk and have
I
lunch
actually thought
together.
that was super cute. For some reason, I wasn't like thinking that was like too outdated, or I was like, oh, it's such a cute little tradition. Yeah.
I want to go to those. Yeah, and I want to go to those movie parties. Where they show the yearling every year. Apparently, I
And
just
Kirk's
want
weird
to.
mime performance, like
Oh, that was fantastic.
I want to see the whole extended cut of that, but he's going to be in all 4 episodes, Kirk. So that's
He better be, honestly. I mean, how do you keep him out?
well, he appeared in the most amount of episodes of all the townspeople who wasn't like Luke, basically. Or
I think he
Lane.
was a regular at some point on the series. I can't remember for how long, but
It
maybe
was like
towards the
season 5 or 6.
middle.
He was finally when you appeared in like 130 something. I guess you finally earn your way into the credits.
Yeah, and I miss Lane, and the Lane relationship with Rory was always one of the highlights of the show. You don't get a lot of those female friendships on TV or in film or anywhere really as often as you should. A lot of those storylines and relationships on TV are some of really the most interesting and the most intimate and the most wonderful to watch. So I'm really looking forward to her return as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I always am excited about that, and sadly, Melissa McCarthy's only in one, but they should probably be lucky they got her for one. I mean, when they tweeted that photo out, we're like, okay. I was ready to jump on the I hate Melissa McCarthy train, where it's, it's like you can't come back and be Sookie for just like one episode.
Yeah, I'm so happy that they brought her back, and that she was able to return. It seems like honestly, how could she not jump at the opportunity to at least do an episode? She this was her first big break, and then she, after the show ended, she did a couple of other shows. She was in Samantha Who, things that were she was working, but she wasn't like her career hadn't exploded. And then of course Bridesmaids happened. Melissa McCarthy, who would have thought this time in the year 2000 that Sookie would be nominated for an Oscar before Lorelai ever even got an Emmy nomination.
Oh, I was thinking that when Lauren Graham presented with Anthony Anderson, I'm like, she deserves an Emmy for pretending to be as happy as she is for him when he's like jumping up and down crazy, because she's like, yeah, never been nominated. Super happy for you. Second time.
And Lauren Graham had not just 7 tries on Gilmore Girls, then she had like another 6 on Parenthood, which I mean, it just always feels like she's just a little bit behind the curve. I think.
Well, they changed the rules for her for Gilmore Girls. I mean, they tried that experimental, we're going to narrow it down to the top 10, and then we're going to have them watch sample episodes, and then we're going to go to the 5 nominees, and she screwed up.
Yeah, I do remember she
submitted the wrong
really,
episode.
Yeah, they never released specifically the lists of who made it in and that sort of thing, but things leaked out. We found out information. I can't remember what episode she submitted that was supposed.
It was
I
the
remember
finale of season 6, where she's demanding that Luke. I've been doing a lot of research. where she demanded that Luke marry her instead of the episode that most people thought she should have gone with, which was the return of the prodigal daughter, when she finally reunites with Rory. And she has that really touching scene with her and with Emily, and they strongly hinted that she made the top 10.
They did, yes.
Oh,
But it's so sad because I mean, a lot of people like. I mean, she shouldn't. It shouldn't have had to come down to just that. You know, I mean, a lot of people just keep getting in and they make bad episode submissions and or you know, not their best work, or maybe they don't have a great episode submission, but they're nominated anyway. She really deserved more than like one shot to get it right.
well, that was also the year like Kevin James finally got in. Where like he needed to make the top 10 and then a sample episode to make the top 5. It was a pretty, they only did it like once or twice because it didn't really provide any help as far as results are concerned. But
Yeah, it kind of backfired on them. I feel like they could have continued to try and tweak it to help things out, because a lot of the things that went wrong those couple of years, at least went wrong from their perspective, and honestly, in my perspective too, in some cases, you know, judging Lost by an episode submission is really, really hard to do, so it didn't get nominated those years. You know, I think James Gandolfini and Edie Falco missed out in favor of like Christopher Maloney from Law and Order SVU, who, no offense to his performance, and he gave a great performance that year he got in his sample episode, but the Emmys did not change their rules to get rid of James Gandolfini for Christopher Maloney.
no, and that was
So
also the year like Hugh Laurie didn't get in, but House got in, and it provided some really
Stockard Channing
provide great results. What?
Stockard Channing in
Yeah.
out of practice.
Yeah,
So,
it did not provide really good results.
but I always felt that Gilmore Girls, it was really the curse of the WB. Um, because Gilmore Girls was exactly the kind of show that Emmy voters should have flocked to. It wasn't the typical WB show that's like, oh, it's all about teenagers, and you know, the television academy wouldn't be into that, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Dawson's Creek. Those are things that would have been a tough sell on any network. Girls had been on like CBS. That show would have been a perennial nominee, because you know, it has the multi-generational appeal. It's not just about Rory, you know, the teenage world. It's also about her mother's world and the grandmother's world, and it has the snob appeal because it's about wealthy characters. And you know, it just, like, if that had been a CBS show, like Joan of Arcadia, the year that show got in for Best Drama Series and Best Actress, it could have had that kind of success if it had been on another network.
Yeah, because it was still at the time where they're nominating shows from networks. I mean, Joan of Arcadia got in one year. I'm sure Amber Tamblyn and Alexis Bledel don't speak about that when they go to their like little Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants reunions. But it was one of those shows that, unlike Jane the Virgin, which can skew young, where, yeah, this is the one where you can definitely point to and say they have a bias. You're completely right. The others, there's really, you could see they don't really like young shows. They don't nominate teenagers usually. Maisie Williams was like a shock, and she had to be on the most popular television show for 6 years basically to get that to happen.
It took 6 years. Like she's I mean, I think she's still a teenager. I think she's like 19 or 20 by now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it took them a while. She had to grow up a little bit more for them to even let her in. Yeah, it's you know, it's really, but it'll be interesting, especially now, to be able to compare it to Netflix, because we've seen in recent years that the Television Academy, the Golden Globes, the SAG Awards, they really like Netflix a lot more than they ever liked the WB or CW, and the SAG Awards and Golden Globes even nominated Lauren Graham, both of them. So you know, it'll be interesting to see how Netflix does with the show that is so gravely overdue, except for that one Emmy for Best Makeup that it won for the Festival of Living Art. It is officially an Emmy-winning show. But do you think Netflix will help?
I think it could. Does it have to compete in the comedy, or will it compete in the limited series race?
It's hard to say. It has.
I know
It
they
has
just changed the rules, so it's possible. It's really I'm not sure where it's competing.
It's 4 episodes long and it has its own distinct title. Gilmore Girls: A Year in the Life. So I don't think it would be too controversial to place it as a miniseries. Between now and say the Emmys next year, they announce, oh, another season of Gilmore Girls, another year in the life, or something like that. Then it might look a little bit more like a series. And the fact that those those 4 episodes are 90 minutes long each, it sort of blurs the line. Like it's almost like Sherlock. Each one is its own individual film. Do you submit them separately like Sherlock does? Just submits 1 episode a year. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. We currently at Gold Derby have them listed in the movie miniseries races at the Golden Globes. I don't know if that's 100% confirmed, but
the Globes are always more lax with their rules than the than the Emmys. They'll let you do practically whatever you want.
Yeah, the Martian rule. Yeah, oh yeah, he smiles in that one scene, comedy. Um, but if it does indeed, if it does indeed go into the movie miniseries races, I'm actually currently predicting Lauren Graham at the very least to get in. They did like her before. It's coming up at the right time in the fall, so it'll be fresh in their minds. When they're voting, if it's good, which all evidence seems to indicate that it will be good. Amy Sherman-Palladino is back. The trailers have been good. I have a really good feeling about this. I'm really rooting for Lauren Graham to have a good year on the award circuit. It would be so vindicating.
Yeah, I wonder if she would actually have a little bit of an easier time if it was in the comedy race. Mostly because this year might be tough in the limited series. Just looking forward, we have that Reese Witherspoon, Nicole Kidman limited series. Then you have American Crime coming back. And then you have American Horror Story. And we haven't even dropped the F-bomb of Feud into the middle of this. But
and Fargo, I think Fargo's coming back in the spring. So, Carrie Coon is starring in that one too. So, yeah, these days it might be a little trickier.
Yeah, that could be tricky. But I remember when the Arrested Development reboot came back and all of us were just falling all over ourselves. That was the last time I put a newcomer in first place or coming back in first place, because I had Will Arnett in first place. I had the actress who played his mother in first place. I had Jason Bateman in first place. And man, my predictions were just in disarray. But I think if there is some rallying like there was around Jason Bateman, maybe they'll finally just do it if we remind them enough. Hey, you forgot to nominate her. Come on.
Like ever. I mean, it really needs to be. I remember when, she's not as far along, Kurt was when he finally won for The Big Bang Theory. But it's been 16 years. She's been on television almost all of that time. And she's deserved an Emmy nomination almost all of that time. And they didn't even get her once. So I just feel like that needs to be kind of the rallying cry across the next several months through the Golden Globes, through the SAG Awards. Critics' Choice hopefully will pick up this show and give it a push.
The broadcast critics were giving out awards at the time, but she was nominated a couple times at TCA.
Yeah, she was nominated a couple
Kelly
times
Bishop at TCA. Was nominated a few times, although I really hope now that Alexis Bledel is a little older, they would consider her also. They don't have a problem with 30-year-olds. 17. Yeah.
Yeah, the Critics' Choice Awards weren't around, but you're right that the TCA, the Television Critics Association, did nominate Lauren Graham a couple times. I think they nominated her maybe once in drama and once in comedy because the show went through a period of trying different things in terms of submissions. If Gilmore Girls premiered today, it would be classified as a comedy fairly easily. But at the time, anything that was an hour long and had a feeling was generally considered a drama, unless you have to be a half hour with a studio audience or a laugh track, or else you really are more of a drama. But I remember they tried drama at first, then they switched to comedy, then maybe they went back to drama at the end, or they just tried everything to see what would work. And nothing ever quite stuck. But yeah, I think the Golden Globe and the SAG nominations were for drama, because that was still early in the run when they were still trying that out.
Yeah, it was the first few seasons, and it's just one of those things where you're just, they tried everything to get her nominated. I mean, really everything, because they had a lot of press going on about that, and it just could not get nominated. And when you think about how cleverly written these scripts are, they never got a writing nomination. The Writers Guild ignored it. Shame, shame, shame on them, because they're usually the guild we hold to higher standards.
Yeah, and the writers branch of the Television Academy too has done good a lot of times. They have really stuck their neck out for shows that the rest of the Television Academy kind of stuck up their noses at, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Battlestar Galactica and Community. The Wire. These shows were all nominated for writing when they were almost nominated for nothing else, at least nothing above the line. And so I've always loved the writers branch and the writers of Hollywood for sorts of things, but they never did for Gilmore Girls. I don't know, maybe it was a strategy thing. I don't know how many episodes they submitted on the ballot every year. That could be an issue there, but a writing nomination at the very least was absolutely it should have been mandatory.
Yeah, I mean, Amy Sherman-Palladino, I think about that one where they're just like the last 15 minutes are just this family fight between the Gilmores, and you're like, phew, that is a lot of dialogue. They were giving Aaron Sorkin a run for his money as far as how many words per minute they could spit out there.
Yeah, it felt like rewatching old episodes. It really has felt like this is the West Wing, but and I was gonna say the West Wing, but funny. But the West Wing was actually funny from time to time, but a lot more quippier, a lot more jokier, a lot more pop culture-y. There wasn't a lot of that at the West Wing, obviously, but it really did feel like on the same level. It has writing that is so distinctive to it, in the same way that Aaron Sorkin's writing is distinctive to him. It's like you cannot mistake Gilmore Girls for any other kind of show on TV. You hear the tone of the dialogue, the rhythm of the dialogue, the speed of the dialogue. It's not even just, it's like Aaron Sorkin, but it's its own animal. It's its own thing. Oh yeah.
And he has enough Emmys, so she should have at least a nomination. But she writes the whole series, so if it does compete in the limited series side, she would be competing, and that might help her. She would basically be up for all 4 episodes instead of having to submit 1 in comedy. But then she might also be up against Woody Allen, so that she might have to settle for a nomination, but the Writers Guild might finally be able to.
Yeah, it was interesting. It reminds me at the Emmys, if it ends up going, as a miniseries there, maybe of Treme. That show for years, the show on HBO about Hurricane Katrina from David Simon, who is another writer that I adore. It barely got the time of day when it was a series, but then its last season was a truncated 5 episodes, and it went miniseries, and it got a miniseries nomination, and it got a writing nomination. I'm like, yes. So maybe now that although as you were saying before, a long form television, movies, and miniseries is a much more competitive field now, even than it was like 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. So maybe comedy.
Stranglehold on that. But I would actually hope maybe like the Big C, where we finally saw Laura Linney win. I'm just looking that up right now to see if it got a writing on that final season. I know it finally got a supporting actor nomination. Let's see.
I don't think it got in for writing.
No, it was only nominated for Laura Linney won, and Jonathan Benjamin Hickey was nominated. So it could get in.
Although with their luck, watch, like, wherever it goes, that if it goes comedy, then Lauren Graham is snubbed, and Alexis Bledel is snubbed, and Kelly Bishop is snubbed, but Melissa McCarthy gets a nomination for Best Guest Actress in a Comedy Series for her one episode, which I don't know, maybe it's one scene or two, and she'll get a nomination.
That'll drive Lauren Graham to finally start drinking. Like, that'll be the off the cliff moment.
Honestly, I think really it is Melissa McCarthy's moral obligation for the next several months to just campaign for Lauren Graham to be nominated for an Emmy wherever she ends up.
Yeah, and I just think it shows how wonderful a person Melissa McCarthy is to say, yeah, I can find the days necessary to, like, because you see her on IMDb and she's got like 15 projects in the works, to find the 3 or 4 days after her shows ended. And I'm sure she was kind of, sad about Mike and Molly ending, to go and do this. And if she's only in one episode, she still made the trailer. That's
true. Yeah, I remember watching for her. I was like, isn't she supposed to be in this somewhere? She's supposed to be in this. Like, there she is. She's in this. They didn't lie to us.
Yeah, I mean, when you see like Amy Sherman-Palladino and things, and she's like, no, I had no clue. I mean, we wanted her so badly, and we just begged her not to screw up her audition because no one knew who she was. And now she's the biggest movie star, one of the biggest movie stars in the country.
One of the most bankable comedy actresses in the world. She's a Ghostbuster. She's a bridesmaid. She's an Oscar.
Came that close to winning an Oscar, probably.
Yeah. She and an Emmy winner on top of that. She beat Laura Linney that year. It's honestly, you know what? If this doesn't work out for Lauren Graham, I think I was going to say she and Amy Poehler, but Amy Poehler finally got hers. But even still, they should just get together and do some kind of buddy revenge comedy thing, and just like, they're them through Hollywood, just like mowing down the city.
Yeah. It's just, it's one of those things where it's just so infallible that the only nomination they got was for some crazy episode where the town did some theme. I mean, that's a category Game of Thrones has like on lockdown now.
Yeah, and now they have so many more makeup categories than they even had then. It was. I think they won makeup for
outstanding makeup for series, non-prosthetic editing.
Yeah, and it was, and it's so incredible. The only nomination it ever got, just kind of smack dab in the middle of the show. And it won it. It just won that award. So now it's an Emmy-winning show, and nothing after, nothing before, not even another nomination for makeup. It's just like it feels almost just like a fluke. Like how did this happen if nothing else ever did?
Yeah, and ironically, because Arrested Development did the same shtick with this living art, they apparently didn't go heavy enough on the makeup because they didn't get nominated for it. It's just weird. It's just one of those things where it's like, why couldn't it be like a writing nomination and they didn't win? Or why couldn't it just be Lauren Graham on a one-off kind of a thing? Especially, I think it was the second season when she got a Golden Globe nomination, she got a SAG nomination. Everything seemed pretty in line for her. Yeah.
And then there was a similar fluke on Parenthood, Lauren Graham's next show, where her on-screen boyfriend, Jason Ritter, got a Guest Actor nomination, the only nomination ever for Parenthood. And it was a major acting nomination, and it wasn't for Lauren Graham. She seems to be a good luck charm for other people's careers.
Yeah, poor thing. She's really one of those who really deserves the nomination at this point.
She really does. Just for, honestly, at this point, lifetime achievement as a non-Emmy nominee. Like, just a nomination for just putting up with it.
Yeah, like I said, she was a very good sport this year, agreeing to present the Emmy nominations, and then just seeing how she's smiling there, trying to be happy for for Anthony Anderson when he's jumping up and down. It's like, yeah, I'm so happy for you right now at this moment. It must be wonderful.
Well, fingers crossed, you'll be watching Gilmore Girls when it premieres on November 25th or in the days following. I don't know if I'm going to binge it right away, although I might, because I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to risk hearing about it afterwards, because I know too many people who enjoy that show. Um, so I might get on that early. And fingers crossed for the show, fingers crossed for the return, fingers crossed for the supporting characters and the writers, or the writer Amy Sherman-Palladino, to get some recognition, assuming that it is as good as the show's history would lead us to believe it will be, and that Lauren Graham gets some recognition. I'm predicting her for a Golden Globe nomination at the moment. So thank you very much, Amanda, for joining me tonight. And thank you, everyone, for watching or listening. And we might be discussing Gilmore Girls down the line in other awards conversations. I can only hope so.
And congratulations to Melissa McCarthy on your already Emmy nomination, probably, for your one episode.
Yes, congratulations in advance to Melissa McCarthy. But then at least Gilmore Girls will be an Emmy-nominated show for acting. Even if it's for someone who she's good. She's good.
She could get in for almost anything in the guest category, probably.
So we will hope to see that and more in the coming months. So have a good night.